I'd like to call the Finance Committee to order on Monday, March 10th, 2025 at 2 p.m. Roll call, Berto here.
Bell here.
Housen here.
Is there a motion to approve the amended agenda?
I'll make that motion.
Motion by Bell,
So moved.
second by Housen. All in favor?
Aye.
Heidi already corrected the typo in the first line of the minutes. Did anybody else have any comments, corrections?
I corrected from my end in CIP that you mentioned about going to be page 29, year of 27. The $150,000 was corrected to 500. I have not updated the file yet, but it's corrected.
Okay, thank you, Vlad.
Thank you for mentioning.
All those in favor respond with an aye.
Aye.
I'll make the motion and then I.
Oh, yeah, whoops. Motion by Bell, second by Housen. Aye.
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 Okay. Comments, correspondence, and concerns from the public. I don't think we have anybody joining us. I was told that Miles called me this morning and said that he was going to be on there, and I told him that I would move item 6D to the top of the agenda. So I would like to address that right away.
I did have a question. I don't know if I'm considered public, but it's a non-agenda item.
Okay.
Yes. Actually, you know what? It's to you, Heidi. Quick question. I noticed that when I get emails from you regarding meetings, meeting notices, there's a confidentiality notice at the bottom of the emails, but that notice is not on the bottom of the emails that come from Janelle.
Then she doesn't have it set up on her email. That's a part of my email settings, so it's automatically there for every email I send.
All right. Because then I had a question about the way it's worded, but we can discuss that later. It was different than Janelle's. And so is it a requirement to put that on there, or?
No, I don't think it's a requirement. I know a lot of clerks do have confidentiality notices in their emails,
Okay.
but I didn't ask anyone how it should be worded. I just started using one.
Okay.
But if that's something that you want to review, we can do that.
I don't know if it's worded right or not. Maybe I'm reading it wrong, but that can be a future discussion. That was all. Thank you.
Okay, so Nate, you wanted this put on the agenda?
Yeah, so I wanted this to come back in front of the committee because I did take some action that's a little bit out of the ordinary. And I wanted to come back to this committee. So there was a reach out from the Pulse, and I'd have to look and see the exact date. It was one we were publishing that was going to be February 26th, I believe. Yeah, February 26th. There was a reach out from the Pulse saying, hey, we're publishing this. We're not sure. Are you sure all these names are supposed to be in there? I said, well, this is what was put out there. So got another reach out from the Pulse, and they said, we've checked to see what was in the minutes. We don't believe that corresponds to it. And it was a last minute call. So I said, okay, well, let's not put it in there. We'll bring it back to Finance Committee because it's one of those things. Once you let the toothpaste out of the tube, you can't put it back in. And I thought it would be better to wait 2 weeks or however long it would be than to put it out there. So I guess I wanted to discuss that. I think the difference of what I saw, for what I perceived that we had approved versus what was put out there is it was for the 22 and 23. And I think the 24 got rolled into there as well. And I think that was the difference for me for the delinquencies.
For me, there was a confusion. And that was that the list that we got, it stated that it was, at least I thought it was, personal property taxpayers, and not real property taxpayers, since we don't collect real property tax. So the notice reads, it says the Village of Sister Bay is attempting to collect real or personal property taxes. And we don't collect those, so I had a question about that. In the note from that is the excerpt, it states, after the tax deadline has passed, village staffs make numerous attempts to collect the unpaid taxes, particularly for personal property taxes that are remitted directly to the municipality. So how do we, I assume do we call or do we email to get in touch with them? And when we do we call and email them about paying their real property tax? So I was confused about that. In the packet for the December 10th meeting, it says the following are the remaining personal property taxpayers who have not remitted the tax. And so it gave the list for 22 and 23. And there were 6 people, or sorry, they didn't give names. There were 6 properties, the dollar amount and the address. And this one, the notice was 8 properties, but no address. And I thought we talked about addresses. So there was a bit of confusion for me. So that was why I agreed with Nate and thought that we should talk a little bit more about it. And I don't know if Vlad or if we even know if we're permitted.
I can tell you about the procedure that I've been doing every year after tax bills go out. No, I shouldn't say that. We get a list from the county of delinquent personal property taxpayers because we have to track those for the auditors. When they don't pay, I don't call or email them. I don't have email addresses. I send them letters in the mail. So it's always a letter in the mail asking them to please settle up on their personal property tax because it's unpaid. It explains what the penalties are and it explains what the current amount due as of the date that it gets sent. We did make one phone call contact to One Party this year because Bud happened to know how to get in touch with them. And after speaking with them, they still didn't follow up with the taxes. So that's why we came to the Finance Committee meeting with the request of, do you want us to continue to track these delinquent taxes? And then after the meeting, I asked the county for an updated list. They sent a list that included the real property taxes, because I have the personal property tax list already, since personal property went away last year. So we're trying to collect a personal property tax that's 2 years old. Anything prior to 24.
So the list in the ad is not for real property.
The list included both, because when I requested that list from the county of the delinquent taxpayers, we didn't always know who those people were. So now we had the list. So since we're doing an ad for the delinquent personal property tax, we included the real property taxpayers as well. Because there were quite a few that were delinquent. There was one that, yes, got on there in 2024. I wasn't paying any attention to the dates when I put the list together. There was one that has gone to foreclosure, so we took it off the list because they were so far delinquent. It's already taken the next step and it's in the court system. So it could be my misunderstanding of what the committee was directing, but when the committee gave the direction to wait until after the January 31st deadline for collecting taxes, that's the first half of real property tax, because personal property was already long past due. So it could be that, I made the mistake here in saying we're putting this list in of everybody, because why else would I wait until after January 31st to get a list of delinquent taxpayers?
So this was a misunderstanding on my part, because I'm reading, the excerpt from those minutes. And it states, after the tax deadline is passed, village staff makes numerous attempts, right? And then committee directed staff to continue tracking the delinquencies. At the time of property sales, the village should ask for a letter and so forth. Additionally, staff was asked to publish a list of delinquent taxpayer names and addresses. I did not understand that that list of delinquent taxpayers' names and addresses was, you wouldn't put that list together until after January 31st. I didn't know that we would wait for that. I'm sorry, that part I didn't understand.
Well, and real property tax isn't even due until July 31st if they've paid it in installments.
Right. Yep.
I think that's a misunderstanding on our part, and because I understand what you're saying, Heidi. You said, well, after the 31st, that means, yeah, we're waiting for that. I guess I think that we should be a little bit, maybe not right off the gun publishing people's names after they miss it by, the first month. I mean, I think that any old debt, I'm okay with doing this. This isn't a very kind thing to do, but it's a necessary thing to do.
And I did explain to the gentleman who called and it said that he was the one who missed it by a month, that when I was putting the list together, I didn't look to see how far delinquent he was. I just included all of the names I got from the county. So he understood that after we talked about it several times.
Okay.
So, and I told him, this isn't done ever. This is a one-time, the first time the village was taking this approach, because there are people out there on the list who just ignore us. I don't know how many letters and wasted postage I've sent trying to collect taxes from folks, even having personal conversations with that one gentleman, and they just don't care. They don't pay.
Sure.
So the personal conversations or letters that you send, I'm going to ask it again, is for personal property tax or
I send the
for
ones
real?
for personal property tax because it's my understanding that the county sends out letters for the real property tax.
That's correct. Okay. So the notice that we were going to put in the paper, I think, I don't know, that some of the people on this list owe real property tax and not personal property tax.
Correct. And they are the ones who have reached out to the village office and said, why is my name showing up on this list?
I think that's a fair question. So
people,
that's
right, Heidi?
why I was
We had two.
concerned about the way that the notice was written and why I thought we should talk about it again.
I'm sorry,
Heidi, there were
Julie.
two people, right, that reached out?
Yes.
Two people.
So Julie, when you talked to the county, what did they say?
I didn't talk to the Heidi, our county, Heidi did.
Mm.
Heidi is the one who's responsible for that. That's
Yeah,
her.
well, Heidi, what did he say?
When I asked for the list, they just sent it, but then he followed up with a phone call because he had by that time already received a call from someone wondering what we were doing. And then I followed up with an email to him explaining the decision to publish these names in order to get the tax paid. Brian did explain from the county that the village is not out the money for the real property because the county has already remitted that tax to us. But we were just putting the list out there for everybody.
So I think that that's a problem for me. If the county is the one that's supposed to collect it, I can understand why it would be confusing for our taxpayers.
We also do notify prospective buyers of that tax when it's delinquent. Title companies contact us and ask if there are any outstanding payments due on property. And so we're always
should.
reporting to title companies when that property is delinquent on behalf of the county then.
Sure, and and we should. I understand that. And I agree with that, of course. I just thought that this was I didn't think we should collect real property tax. And that's why I thought it was confusing. I also didn't, because honestly, I was like, well, wait, we talked about this in December. why are we just doing this in March? I didn't realize that we were waiting until January 31st, but it sounds like we waited until January 31st because of real property tax.
We're to see if anyone had paid their delinquent personal property because those notices again went out with the tax bills for last fall.
Okay, all right.
So
Okay,
I have some procedure questions. So Nate, you stated that the Pulse told you that it was not in the December minutes.
There was some concern that that maybe did not match up. That was the second time that they reached out.
Okay, and why did according to my conversation as finance chair with the village attorney this morning, you did not have the authority to pull that ad, first of all. And why would you not call the village to find out? Why would you take the word of the publisher of the ad and not contact?
I should have, but
Yeah.
there was no time at that point. It was literally the deadline for it. And I'm not trying to cover this up, Denise. That's why I said we need to talk about this. And if that was an error, I understand what you're saying, Denise. And that may have been a mistake on my part. I am just trying to, my thought process was once you get the toothpaste out of the tube, you can't put it back in. And if it waits a week or two, does that materially impact the village? Well, it could go the other way if we didn't have it. It sounds like we did do what we explicitly said we wanted to do. Now we're not sure that we wanted to do what we said we wanted to do.
Okay. And I would like to remind the committee, because Louise contacted me, sent me a text of the notice on Wednesday, February 26th at 2:22 that said, "Hi, this is the ad that the village wants to run in this week's Pulse. We need to stop this ad until it is correct. The content of the ad is not what we approved at finance on December 10th, and the text of the ad is deceiving. Could you please call me?" If I would have responded to that ad, that would have been a walking quorum. So if there are any questions when there is only a committee of 3, it has to go through Heidi or the administrator.
right. And that's my mistake. And thank you for the reminder.
So I'm, and I had a
Back, 7:37.
conversation
And
with,
said, "I saw your text. Sorry, I didn't see it earlier, so we could talk about it." You responded at 7:37.
yep. So I had a conversation with one of the owners of the Pulse over the weekend because I was quite upset when Heidi told me about this and I was looking for answers. And I've gotten conflicting stories between one of the owners, a reporter, and what has been mentioned here today about how all of this came about. And so I don't know if somebody's trying to cover their rear end or whatever, but as far as I remember, the newspaper, the Peninsula Pulse petitioned the legislature to become a newspaper of record. And by doing so, when the village sends them a notice that we are paying for, it is their obligation to print that. Now, do they peruse other ads for whether or not it is, if that's what the minutes said? I don't know. But that just seems unethical. There was also a reporter from the Pulse who contacted 2 of the people that were on the list to give them a heads up. So then the list that was given to the Pulse would have immediately been rendered wrong because they contacted the village and came up with their payments and paid them whoever it was that they had to pay them to, the village or the county. I'm not quite sure which was which. So I think this is just turned into quite a mess by all involved.
Do you disagree that it's okay for us to state that that the Village of Sister Bay is attempting to collect real or property taxes from the following individuals?
I didn't have a problem with that.
Real property tax, we don't collect it.
I
Now,
know.
some of those
Said
personal
on
properties,
the
I'm sorry, Denise.
It
Those-
said on the post that if it's real property, that you pay it to the county treasurer.
But it says we're trying to collect it. I thought, honestly, Denise, you can blame it all on me. Because I saw it, Nate saw it. I was worried about the blowback and what would happen with the village and what we were doing. And
Did we not think about that at December 10th?
I just got finished telling you that I didn't know we were waiting until January 31st. I didn't know we were going to talk about real property tax. The list here doesn't match the list that was in the packet on December 10th. They don't match. We said we were going to put addresses in there. Listen, look at the minutes. Addresses aren't in here. There's a lot of stuff we talked about that is different than what ended up happening.
Well, there were from my understanding, there were multiple addresses for some of the properties. So staff determined not to put the address in there because they didn't know.
It's still not what we discussed, but fine. I went through all the addresses when I saw the ad. Johnston Amusement Park is one address. Johnson Brothers property is a second address. Spencer Johnson is a third address. Those are all different addresses on the GIS. But anyway, what we were told didn't happen. And that's why. So if we want to blame somebody, blame me. Don't blame the Pulse.
So I can comment on not having the addresses in there. Yeah, there's multiple addresses involved. I was a little concerned about people going out to those properties or trying to figure out what properties they were, because our purpose was to try and shame people to get them to pay, was my understanding. So I looked into what the IRS
word shame. I listened to the recording, but
I looked into what the IRS does, and they do not include the addresses. So to be consistent with that and make sure we didn't get into legal trouble to protect the village, I only put the names on the ad. So that part of it, just having the names on there, is my responsibility. Also, price of the ad.
the price.
So Louise, you're saying that if it would have only been the list for the personal property,
It was just different, Denise. I had questions about it. We're talking about it again.
I will say this, we did receive a bill from the Pulse already. I asked Heidi not to pay it because there was nothing produced, although we did receive the invoice for it. And I do know, I was really shocked the ad was not run because I placed the ad and nobody had talked to me about it. You know, nobody went to their administrator and said, hey, I have a concern with this or anything. The first I heard anything really was when the first person called and he told me that the Pulse had contacted him. And then we know the second person called and said Miles had called him. So we had an issue, but by that time the ad had been pulled. Apparently Nate had pulled it by that time, but
The only person I made aware of it was Denise.
yeah, no, like I said, nobody called me. I placed the ad, but nobody had called me asking questions or asked me to pull it. It just somehow somebody else pulled it.
Miles.
Miles,
Hey, thanks, Denise. Yeah, I mean, when you're when you're referencing the pulse, it's me. And there was no like nefarious plot to contact some people or others. I saw the ad. I thought like, oh, that's a little weird, and then I saw a couple names on there that I'm like, that's odd that that person would be behind. I wonder what's going on. And so when I saw that person the next day at the ice rink, I said, hey, we got this ad, and just want to like, is there something going on? Like your name's on it. And this person said, but they were shocked. They seemed to know nothing about it. And they said they'd check it out. Basically, it's just a friend showing up in a public shaming sort of thing. And you're going, and some people in that list are known for being behind on this stuff a lot. A couple of people just shocked me, and I ran into them and mentioned it. So it's not like a nefarious thing, let's just get this person off the hook. It's just, hey, it just seemed a little odd. And what I should have done when I saw those odd names was send that back to the village and just suggest, hey, maybe you want to give these guys one last call, because it doesn't seem to wash, especially some of these people who have a lot of interactions with the village. It seems like they're kind of people that if they knew and was brought up to them that, and also if you're going to put an ad, my thought is that like, that's your leverage point to make one last attempt to collect before, and then you can then say, if you don't, you're now going to show up in the paper. That's like kind of the purpose of the ad attempt is my thought. But I should have called the village with that and brought that up right away. And because there would have been time to make those changes or ultimately change an ad. What I then called Nate about was just, one of those people said they paid, and I'm like, I can't change the ad. I can't just go in and change someone's ad. So you have to deal with this. And I called Nate just to let him know about that. It was really nothing more than that. And also as somebody who wants to see the village do good things, I know there's been a lot of, with everything that happened with the taxes in the fall, it wouldn't look great for these people to be inaccurately or potentially on a list for in some cases pretty small infractions, in my opinion. But I should have taken that to the village. So I'll totally own that. And I think ultimately it's probably a good thing that it did not run, but the right channels weren't followed. So, and if anyone has any questions about it, I'm an open book. So.
Well, I will say I made a mistake too. I absolutely did, Denise.
So what do you want to do about it?
We should publish this. I mean, the poll should do this for free. And we should publish, what exactly do we want to publish? We should agree upon that and make sure that we're focusing and explicitly saying that, because Heidi did what she heard us say. There's no doubt Heidi absolutely did that. So let's be very specific.
I just want to say I didn't know that we were going to put, once again, real property tax on there.
So personal property is tied to real property. Would you want them to be independent of each other?
I think you ought to have another conversation with the county. I mean, if he's okay with us, I don't know. If 2 or 3 of these, I think you said, I'm not sure how many, are real property tax. And I think the other ones are personal. I don't know. We don't have, we are not allowed to collect real property tax, and we get the tax anyway. So I don't think it should be on the list, but.
So do you want to make that a motion that we publish a corrected list with personal property only?
That would be my opinion. And
I will make that motion.
well, we also publish a list that's up to date. because I think we need to look at the list again and make sure that it's, I mean, assuming it's accurate, and we probably need to remove the text that states, that says real, the word real.
Motion by Bell,
Sorry, second.
second by Hausen. Further discussion? All those in favor respond with an aye.
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Okay, now we'll get back to the agenda from the beginning. So we will go to discussion 6A, review financial policies and procedures. Vlad or Julie, who wants to start this ball rolling?
Vlad is going to.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. Just turned out to be that Village of Sister Bay never had financial policies in one place. It had policies, but never was like in one spot. So that you can just go and refer to. So Julie suggested to make like a winter project to organize all of the policies into one. And once we had some free time, we just jumped on it as a team and put everything together. So it was quite a journey to find all of those policies because we had to go through lots of minutes, lots of, but we did locate most of, I mean, I hope most of them in place. There was a revision between Heidi, Julie, me, and Baird. We ended up creating one, and it was a purchasing policy. In addition to buying local policy, so it kind of goes together.
I'm sorry, Vlad, I didn't understand what you just said. It was, what about a purchasing policy? It's part of,
So
it's part of this,
we
right?
we ended up like creating that policy
Oh.
with advice with Baird input,
Uh-huh.
whatever. So anyway, that's a new policy.
Okay,
We did have that policy. We had a purchasing policy in the past when Tasha was here.
Yeah,
But you may have recreated it, but you created it to what I recollect was our old policy. Maybe nobody was using it. But I knew about it.
okay.
well, quick question, Heidi. You sent me over Village of Sister Bay financial policies and procedures. Where did this come from?
That's in the 2025 budget that you passed last fall.
Interesting. But so you did, so Vlad, you didn't use this to create the new one?
Yes,
Okay.
we did use those ones to create new ones.
Oh, all right. Okay,
So whatever it is in financial policies revised, it's old ones revised with input from Heidi, Julie, Adam, and myself.
okay, great.
And obviously from the Board of Trustees.
Mm-hmm.
So any questions?
None?
And I did not see it, and we may not want to be the specific, but I think some of us like gather the budgeting from all the various departments and the organizations that, you know, the SBA and a number of other organizations. Do we want to try and put a time frame on that gathering of that? I mean, one of the things that I've talked to some other people in the municipal world, they've always said like, oh, they start this really, really early. And I understand there's really good reasons not to start it in April, like some of these folks do it, like they prep it, then they have to wait. So it doesn't really do any good to get it ready in April if you don't do anything with it till June. But do we want to have on there to say, hey, we want your budgets by this timeline?
Yeah, and we kind of did. So by July, we should have most of it ready. So that finance director and village administrator will go into review of like preliminary draft before we're gonna try to present to the finance committee.
I mean,
That's spelled out in there.
it says in July, various committees, but is that, I guess, is that firm enough to say we want at that point?
We can make it more formal. I mean, my understanding was by this time everyone should have most of it done.
Yeah, I mean, it's been the case, but I'm just asking.
I know like it's gonna be hard to calculate like labor and benefits because usually the insurance the benefit data doesn't come up until like later August, September.
I guess how I'd see it, how I've perceived this in the past is it is started to form up in July and it's congealed in August. I mean, like really it's the personnel, the labor expense that is the thing that takes a while, and a lot of that has to do with benefits as well.
Yeah, I mean, there are a few other things, but most of it should be ready. And
Okay.
I just had a meeting with Adam before before our meeting. He said we should start working on CAP like in May, like you mentioned,
Okay.
which is going to be a big part of the budget too.
Well, I looked at we had a finance committee meeting on June 24th. And at that meeting, we did have there was a budget calendar in the packet. And June was initial conversations, July was 6-month actuals. So really, Nate, there were conversations in June. July was which I think, and this is in the policy document. 6-month actuals reviewed, draft budgets presented to committees. That was July. And then August, and then September, and then and so forth. So that calendar is in there, and I don't know that and most of this is outlined in the financial policies doc.
Mm-hmm. I'm just saying do we want to make that a harder deadline on there? Do we even want a deadline like that? I just want to make sure that we have that spelled out appropriately, because like you say, it's not, we have an idea of it in July. If that's all we can do, that may be all we can do, and that may be all we should do.
I think July, starting working on this more intense in July, because you're going to have actuals for 6:30. What you just said, Louise, will make sense. And most of the data, crucial data for budget, comes up later too. I mean, we can definitely start working, not just like looking into like in May, but lots of data will be available in July and going forward.
Okay. So I guess what I'm saying is it's a little bit vague, but it kind of has to be a little bit vague because we don't actually get across, there's nothing solidified until August, September.
Correct.
I'm just asking the question.
Yep.
In item 8 on page 4, it says that, where are we? The budget summary is properly noticed and published in accordance with state statutes. Then it does talk about the public hearing. A public hearing on the budget is conducted not less than 15 days. The village board deliberates the proposed budget, et cetera, at or following the public hearing. I know that in 2024, yes. In 2024, there was also scheduled, October 22nd was supposed to be the first public board meeting. The public hearing, and then a possible second public hearing was scheduled for November, but we got behind schedule a bit, so the second one was not scheduled. I don't know that we need to put that language in there, like, and possibly a second one. I just wanted to call that out.
We ended up having one for CAP and the other one for budget.
Right. Yep.
So like 2 workshops.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. The CIP last year was, actually, it wasn't public. Yes, it was. October 15th was the public hearing for that. Okay. Okay. Well, it's thorough. I mean, I know this, I appreciate the time that you went through, Vlad. I'm sure it was hard trying to grab everything from everywhere.
I mean, it's truly team effort between Heidi, Julie, Adam,
Well, thank you.
Tasha too. I mean, whatever
Thank you.
You're welcome, and thank you.
Um,
Quite an assembly job. Vlad, I think this goes, so it's a conversation Vlad and I have had. He said he's trying to put a document so somebody else, if they ever, so whoever comes behind Vlad, whenever that is, actually has an idea a bit more, so they've got a roadmap to follow, and I definitely see that here, Vlad.
Thank you.
So I have some questions on page 4, number 9. The budget is adopted by the board through an appropriate resolution and 3/4 majority vote. And then if you go down to number 11, it talks about the DOR publishes finalized statement of assessment rates in November, which will likely be after the county's deadline for receiving the tax levy to prepare the tax bills. Last sentence, the board may provide consensus of no changes to the budget or request an amending resolution which must pass by 2/3 vote. Question, why is 1 3/4 and 1 is 2/3? I mean, I've never known that we have needed 3/4 majority on any vote.
I can double check.
Number of
that.
items of plan commission that are 3/4.
Right, I know, and that's in, usually it's a higher bar. When we have a 3/4 vote.
Sure.
So
No,
that's why I'm asking why the difference, and I think, in my opinion, it should be just 2/3 for both.
For both. This
I
line
don't-
is suggested by Baird.
By Baird.
I can double check. And I can also double check to make sure it was suggested by Baird because it was 3 or 4 auditors.
Okay,
I would be inclined to say 2/3 on everything, just being consistent, like I said
Right.
at the commission before. I think 2/3 is it's a heck of a bar.
then on page 5, number 5, the village board desires to stay informed as to major outlays. Though authorized by the budget resolution, sums expended in excess of $15,000 for capital purchases should be reported to the village board and to the respective committee charged with oversight, the section of the budget from which the funds were appropriated. To me, that if it's in the budget, you're allowed to spend it. Why do we want to waste staff and the committee's time to tell them about this? I didn't understand it. It seems very different than what we've done in the past.
Julie did mention about this, and Adam agreed that the number is low, and we might have to get rid of this completely. And just, I'm also working with civics to make sure we can create proper reports on a quarterly and yearly basis to be presented to the finance committee and to the board. So simple, easy report, easy to read, easy to understand. Numbers should stand out and just click right on the spot. So far, lots of reports like very complex. I did order a phone call with one of their reports analysts. We'll see. I can create some of them, but the goal is to have those reports in the system for the next person, just in case. So yes, this number 5 will have to go, and we will have proper reports in place that will put controls and monitors.
Okay, so that number 5 is going away?
Well, I have a question on 5 here. I mean, that's just saying that you're going to inform the village board. It's not seeking consent. It's just saying if we spend, I think a dollar amount adjustment would make sense, but it doesn't hurt to say, hey, we spent $50,000, we spent it. You've already authorized it, but not to get approval for if it's part of the budget.
And the board is already informed through appropriation report. It just not necessarily highlights the 15,000. Everything goes on that report.
Well, one thing I think, and I think this is what could have happened, Vlad, that particular item, which ironically is number 5, was in the existing financial policies and procedure.
Mhm.
That
No,
was, that was in the 2025 budget packet.
it was, that's why I left it. I just want to make sure everyone.
And that's why I'm just trying to explain to the others that it was pulled over from the.
So we can, again,
I just don't think it's useful.
I guess I'm thinking about the other people that are reading the packet that aren't board members. And that's why I say increasing that dollar amount, so you're not reporting everything, but maybe making the $50,000 or $100,000, then that's not a bad thing to have that in there, especially on the other subcommittees. Because like if it's something that's happening at Parks, Properties and Streets, you don't know that the other committee members are going to read the board packet necessarily. I just look at it as another chance not to make it more complicated, again, adjust that dollar amount, but to make sure we communicate to the other board, the other non-trustees and the public that, hey, we did this.
So what do you think then, Nate, that dollar amount should be?
I'm gonna say somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000.
I mean, if we're spending $50,000, I think I'm good with 50.
Okay,
Louise?
Yeah, I'm here. Sorry, I just had to grab a note. Yeah, I agree.
Okay. All right.
Can I interrupt real quick?
Yeah,
You had a question right before that one where you were asking about bringing the budget back. It was number 11 on
Yes.
page 4.
yeah.
And you were questioning why one is 3/4 and one is 2/3. I believe 3/4 is what we had. I think we talked about that, but the number for that 2/3 vote, where that comes from, I just checked what the law requires. So after you approve it, we want to know if anything, how the mill rate affects that, or how the TID affects our finalized rate, and then we may change it. That's actually considered a budget amendment, and by state law, a budget amendment can only be approved by needs a 2/3 vote. That's
Okay,
why they're different.
okay. But we want 2/3 for each. Okay. Thank you, Julie. So still on page 5, number 10, the last sentence. Committed funds must be committed through special resolution and released through a subsequent resolution, which is again a bunch of paperwork. But that is the only way that we can commit funds. Is there another way? Is restricting them the same as committing them? I'm just trying to think, staff then has to, most likely you, Julie, as administrator, you have to write the resolution, you have to write the subsequent resolution to release those funds. Is there a different way that we can, excuse me, earmark them and not go through all that paperwork?
I think restricted funds like a little bit different from committed funds. But I will double check with Amber and with Adam what exactly the paperwork behind.
Okay, thank
Because
you.
by restricting, you just saying do not spend until we're gonna tell you to do so. And
Okay,
committed funds, that's pretty much goes through the resolution, but I will double check that.
okay, thank you. On page 6, number 13, the village board will budget for annual step increases. So this was done for the first time 2 years ago. Is this, and personnel had said that they were, or Nate, you specifically said that you went along with it that first year. We're going to have subsequent conversations about it. Is this what we are doing now as a village?
it's what it is. Yes, I mean, like it's what personnel has been doing. I don't like it being in the financial policies portion of it because that's really a personnel decision. It's something that I'm not entirely comfortable with, but that is how the municipal world works.
Okay,
We'd be quite an outlier if we didn't do that.
Denise, I would have to say that if you looked at the minutes, and I don't remember what meeting it was, that we did discuss the fact that when we extended it for 2025, 2024, yeah. No, 2025, that it was, you know, it wasn't a given that it was going to happen. And that we voted to have it happen, but it's not necessarily one that will continue. There was no vote as like, this is forever and ever. So to your point, I don't know that it's a policy.
Yeah, it's hard to see it stopping based on what other people in the public sector are seeing.
Okay.
Denise, I do
Um,
apologize. What page are you on?
I'm on page 6, number 13, Vlad. So would it be then more appropriate to say the village board will budget for proposed step increases?
Just proposed increases based on previous year's adjustments. I mean, I don't think that we should say step in there because do I think we're going to probably do step in the future? Yes. Do I know that for sure? No. If we change our mind there, do I think we should have to go back and change our financial policies too? No. That's one of
Well,
those
we're
things.
supposed to review those annually if there are changes we want to make, and for sure every 3 years. We have to look at it no matter what. And I think we'll probably do it annually anyway when we do the budget every year, because that's what has been happening, correct, Julie?
That you're budgeting for 'em when you're, or the increases when you're doing the budget?
No, that we're reviewing the policies the same time that we're doing the budget. I mean, I'm pretty sure what's happened the last few years in a row.
We have been, we just don't have a lot of policies on it, so, but we have
Okay.
been looking at them as we go through it. I will say this on the step increases, I know we've talked about that for at least 2 years now. My understanding was that personnel had acknowledged that if you want to have employees, obviously you have to pay them well, and there has to be some carrot there that they know they do a good job, they pass their evaluation, they go up every year. And I know we're working on an updated personnel handbook that says exactly that. So in some respects, this matches the personnel handbook. Maybe the personnel handbook overrides this. I don't know. I think, in my opinion, because the cost of living is really the one that is not guaranteed. I think that's the one, if anything, needs to be revised to say something to the effect that that's not guaranteed. The way this is written, it says you get a step and a cost of living.
Right, and that was going to be my follow-up question that right, so
Yeah.
Voted on the cost of living, that wasn't a given, that's correct.
Yeah, so
and it says the COLA will not be less than 0, but it might be 0 because a COLA may not be given.
I think what it's saying is that we're not going to claw money back year over year. That's how I read that. We're not going to say, cost of living went down 1%. We're going to take 1% back of year.
So, yeah, I think we need to add whatever staff thinks is appropriate to add on to that last sentence pertaining to the COLA.
yeah.
Well, I think maybe it's just the COLA will be applied according to, that's when you talk about personnel, because they're the ones that, and they then make the recommendation to the board, right?
I guess my thought is that we should just let personnel make that decision, whether it be a step increase or whatever that increase is going to be. But like you say, Denise, we're going to review it annually. So I suppose if we change that next year, we change these financial policies. It's just, we're not like Julie, you run into this all the time. When we change one thing over here, we have to change it 6 other places that we always refer to it. So I'm not particularly tied to it. I just don't want to make another one of those. If I'm looking at one of those things where we're going to have a linkage in the future, I just want to acknowledge that's a linkage and we're leaving it there. And if that's what we want to do, okay.
Okay.
I think too, this is saying, what is the policy? Well, the policy is we're going to budget for it. Is it saying you're going to do it? No, it's just saying you're going to budget for it. That's really what this is telling you you're going to do. And then you have a different policy, which is your employee handbook, which says if you pass your evaluation, you go up a step. Is
Okay.
kind of how I read this. I mean, this whole guideline is how we conduct our financing, how do we conduct our business? And so I read this a little differently than you guys, where it's saying you're going to budget for it. That's your role. You're going to make sure there's enough money in there in case you have to give it, you've got it budgeted.
Okay.
Like somebody mentioned, we can just add that it's gonna be in compliance with employees handbook. And whatever.
Personnel handbook, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. On page 7, the second sentence from the last, right after it says audit, it says, this list will include the name of the payee, amount, date, and purpose of the payment. I mean, that's why a lot of times we have to ask what what is it going for? Because we don't have that. Are we going to have different reports that are going to
No.
show the purpose of the payment?
That's going to be appropriation report. That's what it refers to.
Right now, you just get a description.
Okay, all right. So that's the new thing you're working on, Vlad.
It's gonna be same thing.
Appropriations.
The only new thing after talking with Amber, we want to add check number to appropriation report. But for some reason, civics, they're not very cooperative with that. So it's hard, whatever reports they already have, to add one more thing. It's a disaster from their end. So anyway,
Okay.
I'm gonna work with civics to make sure one single report will have all of the data needed.
Okay,
So
There's one small thing on that same page, on page 7. If you look at the 1, 2, 3, fourth line up, last word, I think that should say treasurer instead of a Y and ER.
oh, instead of the treasury, from the treasurer.
I don't know if that's the right verbiage or not, but
Yeah.
Well, the
Yes.
treasury is your accumulation of your funds, right?
I don't know. I never seen it used in anything we
Oh.
have. If that's the right word, then fine. Right.
Yeah, from the treasury, not from the treasurer. Yeah. Okay.
So that's
It was written correctly.
okay, right.
Page 8, number 2. Last sentence. If over $25,000, the board's approval upon referral from the oversight committee. I guess I did, the sentence didn't make sense to me. There's something either missing, a word. If the local vendor has the lowest bid price, it will receive the contract subject to the department head. If over $25,000, the board's approval upon referral from the oversight committee.
I think what that should say is subject to the department head's approval, semicolon. If over $25,000, the board's approval is required upon referral from the oversight committee, or something to that effect.
Okay. That's better. Page 10, number 2, last sentence. Suggested language to not have to apply to a year and allows for more flexibility for staff and board to review if changes needed. Was that a note that wasn't taken out? Like somebody suggested that language?
I think so. But yeah, it needs to go out.
Okay.
My apologies.
Number 5 on that same page talks about the village shall also set a self-imposed limit of 75% of the statutory limit as the ceiling for general obligation debt, except in the cases of emergencies. Is do so at the last board meeting when I talked about where we were in the past when we only had the borrowing power of $5 million. I think we were past our 75%. So does this still, who determines something to be an emergency? I mean, somebody could say, well, purchasing waterfront downtown is not an emergency, but we went into debt to do it and surpass that 75% limit. That's not an emergency in some people's minds.
It's the village board at the time decides that if it's an emergency or not.
I just wonder if there's a different word.
Necessity for the better future.
Except in the cases of,
Exigent circumstances, I mean, like it's a legal term they use.
I like that, extenuating circumstances. I mean, I think that's better than emergency. Or in case of emergencies and or necessity, I'm also good with. I just think to only reflect emergency narrows it because there will be other people in the future that will use this document that didn't create it and have this conversation.
I'm good with that change.
Okay.
We just add and or extenuating circumstances.
Under refunding, right below that, the last sentence. In general, refunding for savings may be undertaken when the present value of future annual debt service savings net of issuance cost amounts to at least 3% and could go to 2% if desired, as that is what the Baird model for other municipalities of the refunded debt, including issuance costs. I have never heard Baird talk about 3%. I've only heard them talk about 2%. And did they add that wording?
Yeah.
The 3%?
I mean, 3% it was from the old debt management policy. They
Okay.
added 2%, and the rest out of the rest after that.
Okay. I mean, it's still fine. We can still do it at 2. I think that's what we have done in the past. 3 is pretty high bar. Page 13. Last paragraph, inventory. The finance director shall maintain an inventory of all long-term assets. And it should be reviewed and updated annually.
So we are supposed to do that. We actually do that for the auditor.
I'm just saying that those 2 words and it just
Got
needs
it. Got it.
added to it.
So Denise, you really read this. Thank God.
Okay. Well, of course, isn't that our job?
It is.
Page 19. Last paragraph, delegation of authority. It talks about the finance director / treasurer. Is that still the title?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. I just needed clarification on that. Um, then page 20, internal controls, finance director, treasurer, management, or his, her should be their designee. Because we're trying to get rid of his and her. And also on page 21, under pooling of cash, it's also his or her designee and it should be there. That's all I had. I thought it was a great document. So thank you to all.
Well, Vlad did a good job pulling it all together, finding everything we had out there. You know, you had said early on, Denise, you're aware of a policy. You know, we did find some stuff. I remember Heidi had went back through old documents and we found some stuff that was really, really old. The problem is they never got rescinded. We just started replacing them. So that's why in this one, Vlad added that line about how they just replace all prior policies because it was too random what was sitting out there. You either couldn't find it or it had been replaced but hadn't been rescinded. So this one would replace anything that is out there that maybe wasn't rescinded or that we maybe didn't even find.
Okay.
Can I just add something? I did
Yes.
double check with Julie. I mean, it's just because too much is going on lately and the future is not so clear. I might be talking too much, but I just want to make sure since we looking into investment policies and we're covering like there were some risks and stuff like that. I just want to make sure that village money is diversified and secure. We did check with auditors to make sure everything aligns. And so I do have a file that I would like to show you. Again, Julie, do you think it's going to be too much information to share this?
No, but let me just give a little explanation. Vlad wants to make sure the committee really understands the investments and what's going on, rather than just blanketly approving these policies and maybe not really understanding the impact or what the investments are really like. So Vlad had said, you know, what about if I share with them where we're at? And I said, I think that's a good idea. Maybe they'll want to change the policy or not adopt it the way it is, or maybe they'll want to change something. So I guess this is kind of like a little educational piece, and then we can check to say, is this still the way we want to go with some of these policies?
Okay.
So I'm gonna try to share my screen. We'll see what's gonna happen. So this is a file from auditors, and I did my audit on this file as well. So they gave me just December, but I did the January on my own to make sure everything is matching, and it is matching. So as of right now, we do have
It didn't share yet, Vlad.
it didn't?
No,
No.
not yet.
Oh, how about now?
Now we got it.
Good.
Okay. So again, this is a January file for every single penny that village has in between like gazillions accounts. So we do have FDIC insured accounts, and we also have state insured accounts. But what we do have, which might raise concern, uninsured bank balances. And those uninsured bank balances actually in the local pledge pool between lots of municipalities with the bank of with Nicolay Bank. And her name is Crystal. She sent little brief email explanation that Bank of Nicolay Bank pledged to cover the differences between FDIC and a state. And so the bottom line, every single village community sent is secure.
Do you have that more than an email?
Say it once again.
Do you have that in more than an email?
Like a contract or some sort of a something?
There should be something set up earlier because this pledge pool been going on for like quite some times. And I can double check that.
Okay.
So, and there, another thing to mention that all of the finances checks out to the difference of 1,554, which is could be rounding Excel or even like anyway, according to auditors, it's a very good number.
Okay. That's awesome, Vlad.
Thank you. That's all of us, Heidi, especially.
So Vlad, do we get most of, in terms of guidance for, where we want to put our investments in high? And I understand that we err on the more prudent conservative side. That pretty much comes from Baird?
The conservative side comes from the state regulations. We only on conservative side. We do not have any other options beside conservative side.
Okay.
Yes, so technically Tasha, she's set it up infrastructure between Nikolai Bank, ADM, which is American Depository Management Company,
Okay.
First Bank, First Business Bank, a little bit of with North Shore.
Okay.
Uh,
All right.
Wow, Vlad, you're being humble because since you've been here, you have made some really wise decisions where you're like, I think we should take it out of here and put it here. We're going to get more money. And we have.
Yeah, I mean,
You've made a lot of money for the village
that's
since
something
July.
like $50,000, or it was somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000 a year, I believe, Vlad.
Oh, I
Um,
thought it was 100.
It was like around 100, but between marina, utilities, and village on its own, actually, the general fund didn't
That's
really
what the
like that
number
much because we only like found $200,000 that we can move into the sweep account for extra interest. But marina, they should be happy, and utilities.
So that was just based on you taking a look and looking at the yields and see if we want to put it someplace where it's better.
No, what happened? There was lots of accounts set up, like just general checking accounts, and usually general checking accounts they give you like fraction of the percent.
Yeah.
But I noticed that the balances still pretty high on year to year I went like through probably 10 years of data. I'm like, hey, those accounts always had minimum like 100, 200, $300,000. So why those money not used? So I reached out to Crystal, and I'm like, hey, Crystal, can we convert those accounts into hybrid accounts, which is like combination of money market and just a checking account? She said yes, but there should be usage, like actual like movement of money between between those accounts. I'm like, can we just void something like that? She's like, yeah, sure. Anyway, so it worked out. She set it up everything like in a week or so, and here we are. We have some checking accounts with an investment option linked into it.
Good for you.
So,
Great job.
thank you.
So I guess then does understanding a little bit more about how that works, does that impact what you have in the policies he put together? You want to just keep it the way it is, make any changes?
No, I'm good with the way it is.
I mean, did you have some thoughts? I mean, sometimes you're able to predict what we're going to do somewhat, Julie. What did you expect us to?
We just wanted to make sure that, the way he is proceeding with investments, the way we're doing them, the way it's written in the policy, everyone is all good on that, because that is something we haven't really addressed in
Okay,
the past, is
Yeah.
investments. But if everyone's okay with the way Vlad explained it, what he's doing, the way the policy is written, there won't be any other changes. It's, like I said, it's kind of a new thing that we couldn't find where that was ever discussed, how you're actually doing those investments.
Well, it's a good conversation to have. I mean, in general, the investment policy piece of it is pretty broad and also pretty consistent relative to low risk and It's, which is, the model we need to stick with. I think it's fine. I'm not versed in municipal finances, but it seems to cover everything. I don't know if there's anyone else would, well, you worked with Baird on it, right?
Correct, yeah. They reviewed everything.
Okay, so do we want this to come? Do we need a motion? Do we want this to come back when the changes are made? Do we want to just send it directly to the board where we can take a look at it again? Is that where it needs to go, Julie, to the board for approval?
It should go to the board. We should have the board approve it because it is, again, because it's finance. Make sure that everyone's on board with it. I think that the changes, I think we understand I mean, there is typos in there and some spacing things, and I think we understand the corrections that are needed. So I personally think it could go straight to the board unless you want to have it come back and have another look. I just
We
don't
can
know
look at
when
it
we're
at
going
the
to be
board, I
meeting.
think.
Pardon me?
We can look at it at the board, I think.
Yeah, because, I don't know offhand when you would meet again, and I'd hate to delay it out 2 months. Next thing you're close to your budget season, and let's just move it forward. And like you said, at the board, if there's something that was missed, we can correct it on the floor.
Okay, is there a motion to send the document as amended to the village board?
So moved.
Motion by Howson,
Second.
second by Bell, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Motion carried. All right. 6B, review draft CIP.
Led, can you stop sharing,
Yeah.
or at least that screen? Do you want to bring up the CIP on there? Vlad, the one we're going to be looking at?
So Julie, are you asking me or Heidi?
Yes. Either of you,
Yeah, I can do that. Just a second.
So Vlad, do you just probably want to go to right to page 13?
Yep. Page 13.
Okay. So
did-
this is where a couple of changes, I believe, need to be made. One is after the parks recommendation, that they wanted to take that $350,000 out of 2027 for the parks maintenance building property. They are not interested in spending that, so that should come out of the general use by category, general government and administration.
Okay.
And is that also where the $500,000 for the village hall that I found was an error?
Correct. It went in year of 2027, so now it's. Let me just check one more thing.
That's on page 21, but it should,
So that's going to be the new number, 1,718.
right. With taking out the 350 and did you take out the 350 though?
No, say that once, where it's coming out from?
It is coming out of. Let me find what page it's on. It is on page 31.
31.
Mm-hmm.
New notes. So are you taking out completely?
Yes.
I have a question that absolutely touches on this. The Mill Road parking lot and the admin building demolition, like if we're not doing that. If we were to sell the admin building and we wanted to say we want to take that money that we got from the proceeds from the sale of that or any other property, how would we fit that into the SIP, or would that go into the SIP to say, yeah, we have this project out there, we want to take this money, this revenue, and have it on there? I mean, I see us listing a lot of other revenue sources, but I don't think we have any explicit sale of village property on there.
In the past, I think Tasha had a policy that any sale of property went to offset debt. Now, that's when she was here. That's what she had done with the few parcels that we did sell. But that doesn't mean that's where we need to go in the future.
Okay, so just to throw out my idea on this. And somebody that was way premature asked what was happening to the admin building and said, "Oh, you think that'll ever be for sale?" I said, "I don't know. There was a plan to do some improvements there. I think that's not going to happen anymore." So I started thinking about, okay, well, what if there's at least some interest out there? We could, like any building in the village, it's got value. My thought was we take any proceeds from the village admin building after we move to a new admin building, and we take those proceeds and we allocate that towards the village hall. And say anything we sell from there goes towards the village hall. So we can keep that village hall being revenue neutral and getting some funding for it. Because the citizens do want something done with that or the village hall.
I think you have to look at it on a case-by-case basis where the proceeds, I mean, you could just have a policy, of course, but I think you almost have to look at it on a case-by-case basis.
Well, I'm saying that, but I mean, like, if we make that, is that just way too many moving parts to put into the CIP, and just as it gets further down the line, we've got to talk about it more?
I would say yes, and we can, and as if Vlad goes back to page 13, this will kind of show you exactly, it'll all link together, is what I'm saying, the conversation, what you're talking about,
Okay.
Nate. And because I found that error on page 31 that didn't translate back to page 13, which Vlad's going to bring back up again.
Would you like Excel file or PDF?
I'm following along in the PDF.
Yeah, how come it didn't change, Vlad?
Because it's a PDF, so PDF
Oh,
not getting
oh.
updated. So I can bring Excel page 13. So
Okay.
it's gonna be this summary page.
Okay, didn't change there either.
I thought it did.
It took the 350 out by its use, but the capital projects levy did not change.
It was 1,700,000. Now it's changed to 1,360,000. So
But that's what's in my printout, in my packet, is 1368.
Mhm. 268.
But just try pressing enter. Sometimes it doesn't update the cell until you, like, you selected that cell, go to the formula, press enter. If it's,
I thought it did. Just a second.
Yeah.
There's nothing here. So it's 500. For 2027, it's 500. 500. Just a second. $500. 200. Maybe this file is still broken. So it was on page 29, $150,000. Then I added, I made sure it's 500. So then I removed 350. So that's why it went back to,
That's why, well, I just thought that it should be more because it shows the same dollar amount.
so here's what happened. Let me just go over this again. Village Hall. So it was 150 here
Right,
initially. That was mistake. We fixed to 500. Then
right.
over there it went up to 1,700,000 and whatever.
Oh, so the wash was the 350.
Yeah, then we took 350
Yeah.
and that's why it went back to how it was. That's
Oh, okay, okay. All
I'm
right,
sorry for
sorry.
confusion.
So, the point that I was gonna try to make, related to your comment, Nate, is that, the last time we met, we talked about leaving in the 150,000 in 2026 for, the Village Hall future, renovation for the engineering. And then a $500,000 towards that project in 2027, because it was the committee's responsibility to try to find some funding, or get a grant, that Julie wrote. And if you look on page 13 in 2027, our capital projects is probably about 250 to 300,000 higher than what it probably should be, only 2 years out. I think with the direction that finance has been trying to work on this CIP. So I am concerned that there were not a lot of other places in 2027 to pull an additional $250,000 to $300,000 out to reduce that levy. Now, would we be able to sell that postage stamp of a lot for that kind of dollar amount? I have no idea. I have no idea.
Well, keep in mind too, that we still don't know what's going to happen with the road project. So Robert E. Lee has to engineer the road. That engineering may say the best engineering design is to get rid of to go right where this building is sitting or where this property is. That may impact things. Or if you sell it, you may have to use those proceeds to pay for the shortfall on the road. I know this was talked very briefly at Parks during the budget period, but only 2 million was put in for this road project, and the engineer actually thinks it's more than that. And somehow you may fall short. I don't know. You might be able to get some clean water grants or something for the infrastructure underneath, but you're going to have somebody that can rate those. And so you may need this property to finish that project, I guess is what I'm saying. So just kind of keep that in mind if you're counting on it to pay for Village Hall or some other project. Just
Well,
don't forget that.
I guess I mean, like, if this project can't go forward without that property, I guess I just don't, you and I have had this conversation already, Julie. I understand that, yes, it might be better for a road to go that way. I don't think that we should tear down a building because we want a road there. But that's not a discussion for finance, that's a discussion for Parks, Properties and Streets.
Yeah.
I guess I'm just like looking at trying to fund something without having it hit our CIP. And maybe we don't get that, but at least we're trying to do it. And I don't even know if it's something we want to express in the CIP, if it even makes sense to say, this is the direction we'd like to go. Understanding that, I mean, as it's been pointed out many times, the CIPs are plans and they change as time goes on.
I mean, if you want to memorialize it to a certain degree, we could have Vlad create a new page that would talk about the sale of that property when we've moved out of it for a new administration building, and just write in the notes there one of the possibilities of whatever dollar amount we would get for it could go to offset costs of the village hall. I mean, at least that way it's in there and no one loses sight of it. And who's ever on the board in the future, it's there. They will have to wrestle and make that determination. But that way it doesn't get lost.
Yeah. I think that's all we can do at this point. There's I don't know, how do you feel about that, Luis? I mean,
I was muted. I would agree with you because the Village Hall project is very sensitive to for a lot of people. And if you, even though it's a plan and they understand it's a plan, it's been reduced. And then if you allocate it actually in the SIP now, they're going to, oh, well, there it is. Do you know what I mean? And then you may have to make a change again. So I think it's smarter to do it that way.
okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So you would like us to create new page with general government about sale of old admin building when the time comes.
Yes.
And the possibility of using those proceeds to go into the village hall account.
For what year then? 27?
No year specified.
Oh,
Okay.
yeah.
All right. Okay.
Got it.
Okay. So, so that was the only the two changes that, we needed to make on it. So, what are your comments?
Okay, I had one about Mill Road, but we've talked about it. Hold on, I'm scrolling through the PDF. See what I highlighted.
Oh,
Sorry.
as in the committee report, it says, this is like, number of times it says Denise has this change. I think that, I mean, like, these were general consensus at the last finance meeting, correct? And
Yeah,
that's
I
what-
Right,
read
but it
oh,
was out of those printout sheets that Vlad handed out to us that day, where I had proposed those changes. That then he made permanent those changes because
Okay.
we did all agree, plus with whatever other changes were brought up about removing things from the CIP, like the post office and a couple other things.
Yep.
Yeah,
So I had a question on page 60, Denise, because this was, sorry, on the staff report, it's number 7. Added extension of Canterbury Lane to streets for the CIP per parks. And this is just educating me. So it is on page 60 of the new SIP. Extension of Canterbury, but there's no dollar amounts. So at what point, because if you also then look at the following page, which is the extension of Applewood to Woodcrest, again, no dollar amounts. Can you help me to understand then procedurally when or if dollar amounts would be added?
We don't know if and when we will be able to do this, but
Okay.
it was just like we're creating for the sale at the admin building,
Admin building,
creating a
okay.
page so we don't lose sight of, if somebody came along and bought that 80 or 100 acres or whatever, then the
Yep.
village wouldn't have to necessarily be as concerned about making those extensions or those connections, because if they wanted to develop it, it would be their responsibility. But as things progress, it's kind of like a tickler file that's in here that every year we need to think about, see where we're at in the big picture of things and where we want to go. So it's just there.
Okay.
and like the discussions that happen to plan are, these are concepts of roads that might not be Canterbury. I mean, like, yes, hope it's Canterbury, but it could be some other road that's connecting generally from 57 to Woodcrest.
Right.
Mhm. Okay, I understand the purpose of it. I just wanted to make sure I understood that. Okay.
Hey,
But let me also explicitly say, we're not saying a road is going to go here. We're saying we want to connect
I
these
know.
locations.
Yep.
No, and
Okay.
I think that's important for anybody that reads the minutes or anything after the fact, because I don't know how many times we've heard that come up at plan. Of, you're gonna build a road in my yard, and that's not what the goal is here. It's
Okay.
have,
Vlad, just so you know too, moving forward, so these roads that we're just talking about went in front of the Parks Committee. We did get some estimates from Robert E. Lee and they were shared at Parks. So we do have some approximate numbers. I don't know if you want to put that in there. One
Let
of
me
the,
give you notes. To be honest, I don't even know where those roads are.
okay. You might
Right.
want to look at those, or we can look at those. They went, like I said, Parks Committee looked at them just a few months ago. And one of the concerns with putting a number in is, of course, if that estimate doesn't get updated, it might fall short. But just as an FYI, that we do have some numbers tied to those. We did get some estimates on the roads.
Well, you could put it just in the budget impact and other instead of putting it in any year. We received estimates whatever month, whatever year, this is what it was. So we will know for inflation and cost of goods or whatever, but at least
Right.
that there's a basis number. So I think that's a good idea. We could put it down there.
Okay.
I'm gonna ask you after the meeting about those numbers, Julie. If that's
Okay.
okay.
Other questions?
No, not for me.
Nate?
No.
So. So both of you are good.
This is what we discussed the last meeting. I mean, that's what I went through, read, looked at it. We've already discussed this once. I understand there's those couple changes you made today.
Okay. Well, because if I go back to, if Vlad, you could go back to page 13.
You're saying the 1.36?
Right. Well, and even for 2026, if our levy for 2025 was, let's just round up and say 1.1 million for capital projects levy, I think that should be the highest that we should be going. And 26 is over probably by $100,000. 27 is over by $300,000. And so we need to hone in on how we reduce each of those numbers, and what is slated. Now, for 2026, we do have that $150,000 in there for the Village Hall engineering. We're going to keep that in there and to see if we get the grant for the Village Hall. If we don't, I think that will be an easy number to pull back from. I understand that it is important to a lot of people, but if you and Louise are leery about our budgeting process and our CIP, then we need to pull those numbers down closer, if not lower, than what they were this year. So decisions have to be made. So that would be an easy one to pull out of the 2026 CIP, but we won't have that answer until fall. And we really can't afford it. We cannot levy 1.37 in 2027.
So we need to make those both 1.1 roughly, or less than.
Or less.
Okay, so do we want to do that work now?
Well,
Right?
yeah.
Okay. So,
I mean, if we want to wait until fall to find out about the grant, we don't probably have to talk too much about 2026, because that would kind of take care of the engineering aspect of it and postpone that. But out of 2027, do we then just pull the whole entire $500,000 for the Village Hall? Yes, the committee has been working on this, but with the other projects that we have with the Mill Road Triangle and with the administration building coming up, those have been in the pipeline longer. So I don't know how we can actually fund anything for the Village Hall in the near future is my take. As dismayed as some people who are really passionate about that project, I do not see that as a priority in these next few years. Maybe it could become a priority, unfortunately, in 6 years, once we pay off loan number 58 and we don't have that $650,000 payment on that loan anymore. I know that's a long way off. But other things could happen between now and then. But for 26 and 27, I just don't know.
What if, I mean, if we don't do the engineering this year, then would we never not do the engineering, or we push it back to 27? It seems more likely that we would push it to 27. Or what do we want to do with that if it doesn't get a grant? Are we saying there's no grant, we don't want to do anything? I guess what I think we should probably do is cut that number in half for 27. I would like to see us, when we vacate the admin building, sell the admin building, allocate those funds for that, because the other thing that people have feelings about is preserving historic buildings. So we can do those, we can preserve a historic building and we can also renovate a historic building. Not preserve it, but we can keep it around. So I look at that as trying to listen to those people and acknowledge what they're looking for while not putting ourselves in a worse place financially. So have it, understanding that may be engineering. And that gets us the majority of where we need to for 27, does it not?
So if you would reduce it by the 350, it would.
I'm saying
And if we do get the grant, it will put us in a really, depends on how much, was that a 50-50 grant, Julie?
No, and I'm trying to think back here because that changes all the time what your kickback is on that or what your match on that. So just remind everybody, so with the CDBG, they require the engineering to be done. The engineering will not be done this year. So, but Mike is trying to get the plans far enough along that we're hoping that those plans would be good enough to get the funding. We don't know. If it is, we need this, they estimated that we would need about $500,000 in match. And we had to show on the books that we had that match. So it made sense that, well, have it show that there is 500,000 there. You can prove to CDBG, no, we've got the money set aside. See, we got 500,000 here, and hopefully they would approve it. You could then go through and actually have those required engineering drawings done and move on with the project. Now, if you don't get that CDBG grant, clearly that $500,000 can be taken off. At some point, you're still going to need to pay for that engineering. So then when the opportunity or an opportunity comes up again, you've got state approved plans that you can move forward with.
I mean, the committee talked about that the village was not going to foot this bill. Or the village told the committee that they were not going to foot this bill, that if all of these people that showed up to all of those meetings and wanted this to happen, that they said that they would do the fundraising. That committee has simply decided that they don't want to go down that avenue and the village is going to pay for it all.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you leave it on there for purposes until you know whether you get the grant. I mean, clearly this document we have in front of us isn't getting adopted until
Right.
next fall, right?
Right.
By that time, you'll know whether you need a match or not. I got it. I need a match. I need to show I have a match of 500,000. You know, for the purposes right now, when you write that grant application, you have to show that you have match money. And that's what this document does. By the time you go to actually adopt this, you'll know whether or not that CDBG grant was approved. May not, because you don't have engineered drawings right now. And if you don't, strike the whole thing. I shouldn't say that. Then I think the board has to decide, we strike the whole thing or we tell people they have to fundraise for that. So
Do we know what month? Do we know exactly what month we're supposed to be hearing about this? And this is,
No, I
this
don't,
a
because
federal grant?
yes,
Well,
and
we
I
can pretty
don't.
much kiss that baby goodbye then with what the government is doing.
Yeah, I just know it's due in May. So yeah, you're probably looking at about 3 months maybe before you'd hear something back. I don't know. I haven't looked at it in a while. And on this one, I'm not going to be writing it. You know, we have some documents we have to get before the board at the end of the month. You have to have before you can even submit the application. Um, but yeah, if you don't get it, there's some decisions that have to be made. So, because it's a big project. I mean, you're looking at, again, a couple $1 million to renovate that building.
So it sounds like we should just leave it the way it is right now. And then, again, you know, that we're not doing anything about it. And I mean, I'm happy to make some suggested cuts now, but it's likely we'll have to just go back and do it again and revise it again. So, I mean, we don't have a lot of wiggle room anyway. So it's probably best to just do nothing, and not nothing, but make a decision to leave it as it is and revisit in, I guess would be fall or July or something when we start looking at it again.
Well, I think that we know what we can do. We've got an option. We can get there. But there's too many unanswered questions at the moment. I think you're right, Denise, that we know what's happening federally. So it's pretty unlikely, but let's not preclude it from happening if how miraculously that still happens. I look at it as we've got a path forward that we know about that we can implement pretty quickly.
Okay. Okay.
Just a last comment on that. You know, I think too, we have to start looking at whether or not we can, if people are interested in sponsoring some of these larger projects. You know, you have the Crest Pavilion, you have, you know, different philanthropic people that often come into a community and pay for a lot of things. We don't really have that, but we've got some really big projects. We got an ice rink. We got you know, the building that we want to put up near the ice rink. We've got this village hall. Those are all public, high visibility community projects that would be attractive to somebody who wants to do a sponsorship versus always putting that on the taxpayer. So just something to think about as you move forward and thinking about policies or how you do those. Do you have limitations on who can sponsor projects, or maybe you don't want them at all? Maybe we want to continue to just tax everybody for them. But at some point, I think to get everything done that we should, you know, maybe the money is, you know, we don't have anything prioritized, right? Maybe that money goes to repair roads before we renovate a village hall or build a building next to the ice rink or something, which means to get everything done, you are going to have some donors step in and help out. So it's just something to think about as you move forward.
Something that when we talked about the playground, and I want to mention it again, is when we have projects like this, like you're saying, Julie, these are high public visibility projects. Even if we put some of our resources to, we should be treating it as a matching fund situation so that we can at least a minimum multiply the effect of our dollars.
Well, and I know this isn't part of this agenda, but just something to think about too. When people donate money, they want to have that be visible. And we don't do a good job of letting people know who has donated money to stuff, right?
Well, maybe we can do one of those big trees that we talked about inside the new village administration building.
Yeah,
on
because we had
the wall.
people, because you know, let's face it, we've had that somebody donate money to the playground. Nobody knows who donated money to the playground. We had a guy donate money for the Pebble Beach. Nobody knows he donated money. We had a woman donate 40,000 for the dog park. Nobody knows she donated money. And we haven't done the projects with the money yet, but I think it's still that visibility. And then people are like, oh yeah, that's a good idea. I want my name on there. And kind of like the benches. And then you do get more people donating, and it helps people have pride in their community, which we need, but it also helps pay for some of the projects that people want that we just can't afford.
I look at the base of the Peninsula Tower, the one, the Eagle Tower, and that has got a, I don't know, there's a covered area where you've got a list of all the donors, and there's big and small. The bigger the donor, the bigger their name is. And I think that would make a lot of sense. This is a parks discussion, but obviously benches have challenges that we've run into over time.
So I think the other thing that I forgot to have Vlad print out for the January meeting. And when we restricted the 55,000 for, that we said we weren't gonna spend on the trail engineering, the 75,000 for the demolition of the parks maintenance building on Mill Road is restricted. What Vlad realized after that meeting is that we did not talk about the new dump truck replacement. We did not print that out. We did not have a conversation of it. It is on page 43 of the packet. We did not restrict it, and we had talked about not spending it. In light of what is going on in the federal government, now this, we already taxed for it for this year. We said we were not going to spend it. But do we want to change our mind? Because not knowing if and when tariffs may go into place, and it could cost, up to what I've heard, $9,000 more in if tariffs are enacted. Do we want to restrict this? $85,000, or do we want to tell Eric that he can go ahead and order it now and see what happens?
I think we should still restrict it.
So in restricting it, he is not able to order it, right?
Right.
Okay. And right now we have 85, and then 10 grand comes from the sale of the truck that they're currently using.
Right.
And that's for 26. Okay.
But we already have the money.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't affect the budget at all for next year.
Other than saving us $9,000 potentially, or whatever that.
Right. But does waiting basically, going to cost us another 10 grand, There's a lot of conversations about that, Nate.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I'm fine if he wants to order it.
I think I want him to order it. It has no bearing on the tax rate for next year.
Denise, you're right. You're right.
And if for us to say, well, we taxed you, but now we got to throw another 10,000 at it, possibly.
Yeah.
That's a pretty big increase. Granted, we don't know if it will happen, but it makes no sense anymore to hold it.
Well, let's put it this way, the trucks aren't going to get cheaper.
Right.
That's for sure. So even if they remain flat, which is probably doubtful. Yeah, hedging our bets and getting, I would agree. Yeah. So do we need a motion for that or no?
We didn't do it, so I guess
Then we don't.
Shouldn't need.
Right. We hadn't restricted it. All Vlad did was tell Eric he couldn't order it. But
Okay.
because we didn't restrict it because it was already in the budget. Now, yes, it will have an impact on the ad that we take out, Louise, your letter, because that dollar amount was in there,
Yeah.
that's our next agenda item.
Oh, yeah, because it comes out of the 330. Okay,
Right, right.
all right.
So, all right, so now you can tell them to go ahead and order it and see what happens.
Okay, so we're moving.
So how does that, let's just say what happens if it's $96,000? Then it comes back to us, or we budgeted it for 95, I'm just asking a question, just procedurally, I'm not,
So normally what we try and do is if that were the case, we would say, I'm sorry, we only have 95. And they would usually sell it to us for 95.
Okay.
Or Eric, if he couldn't, he would probably, I know he has to sell the shuttle bus, maybe some of that money can help pay that. But usually if it's $1,000, he can usually try and find or rob Peter to pay Paul within his budget. But I don't think it'll be an issue for him. I think he'll be able to just say that, I'm sorry, this is what I've got. And
Or
they,
maybe we'll get more than 10. Or we
Yeah.
could get less than 10.
Yep, you could, but once he knows the numbers he has to work with, he can negotiate within there to make sure he can make the purchase.
Yeah. And so I called him about something else last week pertaining to the budget. I had invited him to this meeting, but he must be busy. But I told him that we were going to be talking about it and there was a possibility. So I did give him a heads up. So, okay. All right.
Glad will you be letting him know that he can move forward with that?
Yes.
Okay. Then we go to 6C, review 2024 tax bill notification.
So to your point, that number goes to 245,341, which is not kind of the difference. Right? Unless we want to throw something else in there. So what we can't say is the difference between no increase and the 10%.
Right.
That's what we said we do. So,
Well, we can add a whole nother sentence that we planned on deferring the difference between the increase in taxes and the increase in projects planned for 2025. And then we could, I guess, go in light of the discussions around tariffs, we decided to move forward and order this truck. So it wouldn't cost us, up to $9,000, the possibility of $9,000 more if we
Well-
waited.
let's not say 9,000 because it could actually probably would be a bit more than that. Let's just say the likely increase.
Okay. More general, right? Because we don't know. Those were only some estimates that I had been hearing and reading about.
I've heard them north of that on a lot of things. Oh, here's Eric.
Oh, that's funny.
so what I could say is something like, however, the Citrus Bay Village Board plans to defer $245,341 in projects planned for 2025, period. Next sentence, the difference between no increase in taxes and the 10.8% increase incurred is, or what I could say is something like, this is short of the difference. I'm trying to make it so it's easy to, I have to wordsmith this a little because I'm trying to make it so it's really not confusing and it doesn't look like we're trying to, double talk our way out of it. Let me figure out how to say it. I need some time to figure that out. I'm sorry.
But that's okay, but I don't think it has to come back to finance. I think if you,
All right, well, I can send it to Heidi and she can send it to you guys.
Okay,
if you want to look at it. I just got to figure out how to say it.
sure.
You know, I think that might be better.
Can we say sincerely instead of warm regards, or are
Of course,
you?
yeah, we can say sincerely, sure, yeah. Okay, so just rewrite that third paragraph, okay. Okay, and then I had changed some of the verbiage from, transparency, I added communication. I think I added all the changes that everybody talked about.
Yeah,
Hey,
And you
Louise.
can, I mean, you can go to the village website and you can sign up for village meetings. I think that Janelle's hesitancy was that sometimes, I don't know why exactly, but sometimes when people go in and sign up for them, they don't get them. I can't prove that. I don't know. But anyway, that's.
Heidi, do you know anything about that?
As far as people signing up, yeah, other than just general notifications, we do, when we post news and notices, a number automatically pops up that how many people have signed up for this, but I don't see those names or who they are.
No, I
Not
know
sure
you
how
don't,
that
but
works.
I don't know why Janelle thinks that maybe they don't, even though they've signed up for it, they aren't getting meetings. I'm not, honestly, I should have asked. I
Well,
don't
the
know.
meeting notice distribution list is completely separate. That we maintain in our email group. So people have to request that of us specifically to get added onto that list.
Oh, so that's why they have to email Janelle.
Yeah. So,
Oh,
but when
I'm
you're
changing that
registering
sentence.
for those news and notice items on the website, I'm not sure how it's grouping those people.
Okay, then I'm gonna change that last sentence and say, all right, never mind. I'll change that last sentence. It would be good if they could sign up. You know, I know they're gonna get the whole thing, but so they get the whole thing, you know, but anyway, okay.
right, they can look at it, they can not look at it.
I'm just gonna suggest that they email Janelle, not call. Okay.
Eric?
Unmute yourself, Eric. There you go.
You get to order your truck.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you. Sorry about being late. I had a dental appointment for my daughter.
That's okay. I mean, you came in at the tail end of our conversation. We just made that decision that, in the possibility of tariffs and, $10,000 more on the price tag of a vehicle if and when they might go through, we thought sitting on the money made absolutely no sense and possibly costing us more.
Sounds good. I'll get working on ordering it right away.
Okay.
Thanks,
Now,
Eric.
when you ordered that, I mean, there's very specific things that you need on that truck, so it is built specifically for the village, or?
There were some specific needs that me and the former DPW were looking on adding to our dump truck. So we were looking to add an aluminum chipping box and then go along with a snowplow package as well.
No, okay, we did not approve the shipping box.
We could possibly retrofit it like we did on the 2000 one as well. That's a homemade chipping box that Steve Mann had rigged when they were still driving the dump truck from 97. So we
Yeah.
rigged it to fit on the 2000 dump truck that it's currently on right now.
Well, you would be able to order that next year. So,
Yeah, we can make it work.
okay. All right.
I just had a comment on the taxpayer letter. Louise or committee, you might want to spell out tax increment district instead of using the acronym because a lot of people may not know what TID is, and
Okay,
we get a lot of calls.
okay. Okay. This is back to actually the discussion we had about financial policies. Because I was looking for our other one, it was hard to find. Do we want to try to post that someplace on the website so people can find it? I don't know, and it's not in the minutes of a meeting?
The letter, Louise?
No, I'm sorry. Sorry about that. I'm back to our new financial policies document.
So once the policies are adopted, then they'll go out as a news and notice, and they will get posted on the agenda under Vlad's page. There'll be a link to the financial policies.
Okay, great.
I do think this letter should also, once it's signed too, we can, well, we'll put it out on the news and notes. We'll do the email blast, but yeah, because you didn't want to put it in we didn't want to mail it, is what we decided.
Right, too much
Um,
money.
Would it go as somehow be summarized to go as a press release as well?
Yeah, I thought that's what we talked. Yeah, I thought we.
I mean, like, didn't you say that Deb said they were unlikely to have another press release on this because they'd already
Yeah,
covered
well, she
it?
said, but well, a press release, she doesn't necessarily, wouldn't necessarily write about it. However, it could still go as a press release. You know what I mean? She doesn't write. So in other words, she won't write another article because
Sure.
she's covered it a couple times.
Sure.
Matters to be placed on a future agenda or referred to a committee. So I don't think finance is gonna have to meet for a while, right?
Vlad, did we have to bring back the information from the auditor or regarding the budget amendment? We talked about some things that are going to need cleanup at the end of the year. Will we have to, are we
So-
going to bring that to the finance or just directly to the board? Kind
So
of
what
depends. how much
happened, as far as like audit and all, going back to the budget amendment, Amber, she said, yes, we over a few things, but they stayed with the cost center. They're like, I mean, doing this pretty much like blindfolded for the first time, we did pretty well. According to auditors on the scale from 1 to 10, which is 10 is the worst, 1 is amazing. So we had 2 and maybe 2 plus. So lots of things checked out amazing, like cash, tracking, the accounting piece. That's when auditors like stepped in and help us sort everything out. Again, going back to amendment, they would recommend to do the amendment, but it's already too late. So Amber is going to do presentation when everything is ready. She's gonna speak to the board with her findings, her suggestions. That's what I was told going to happen.
Okay.
But once everything's gonna be like super clear what's going on, before even Amber is gonna speak to the board, I would like to present some summaries to Finance Committee. And I will let you know, I mean, when everything's ready. Is that okay?
Maybe. And the reason that I say that, Vlad, is can you go over what you want to present to us? I just don't know that we necessarily need another meeting, especially if we're not doing a budget amendment. Because everything fell within their categories, and so that was fine. Will the committee allow me that latitude to determine what Vlad wants to present to us, whether or not we have that meeting,
Or it goes straight to the board.
or it goes straight to the board?
Yeah, I'm okay with that.
So yeah, definitely I can run by you, Denise, and if you feel it's worth to present, then we can have like quick meeting. If not, then it's gonna be Amber is gonna present everything to the board
Okay.
when the time comes. Usually it's after May, either sometime May or June. July should be the latest. I don't think it's gonna be July, but it's gonna be either May or June.
Okay. All right. All right, so we wouldn't be meeting until then because we have nothing really else to talk about. So it could be May, could be June. Okay. So it's going to be a while, couple months, 3 months, maybe not at all. All right. All right, if there's nothing else, then is there a motion to adjourn at 4:15?
So moved?
Motion by Hausen,
Second.
second by Bell, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carried. Thanks, everyone.